Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Jonasz Lewiński. Russia launched a drone attack on multiple regions of Ukraine overnight, shortly after the end of a 30-hour Easter truce declared by Moscow. Air raid alerts were issued for the Kyiv, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, Cherkasy, Mykolaiv and Zaporizhzhia regions. The truce declared by Russian leader Vladimir Putin expired at midnight on Sunday. Both sides accused each other of violating the ceasefire. Several hours before it expired, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Putin had not given an order to extend it. Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of breaching the truce, with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy saying that Russian troops had violated the ceasefire nearly 3,000 times since the beginning of Sunday. Russia, however, said it had repelled assaults by Ukraine and accused Kyiv of launching hundreds of drones and shells. Now, despite a 30-hour ceasefire over the weekend, on the front lines, Ukrainian soldiers say the guns never fell silent. Russia stands accused of violating its own promise to suspend the fighting, with President Zelenskyy dismissing the truce as a PR exercise.
Moscow declared an Easter ceasefire, but according to Ukrainian soldiers, the shooting never stopped.
My opinion did not change regarding the ceasefire. It was announced only to show the world as if they were making some steps, concessions for us. But in reality, as we can see at the front line, nothing has changed. I think it is blatant lie, as it always was.
The Easter ceasefire was supposed to come into effect at 6 p.m. on April 19th and last until midnight on April 21st.
Shelling continued. We can see it in the news. For example, in Kherson. Also, assaults and shelling continued at the front line. There's no indication of a ceasefire. I think it was expected because we know who we're dealing with for the past 3 years. They have no humanity in them. I will see. I hope that Russians will finally adhere to the deals, but I doubt it.
But according to Ukrainian sources, Russian drone strikes have caused multiple civilian casualties in Kherson.
What do I want? I want it to be over and to spend big family holidays with my family and not at the front line. I want to be at home with my wife and children without war for anyone.
Russia and Ukraine traded blame on Sunday over the collapse of a one-day Easter ceasefire.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he hopes Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week to end the 3-year-long conflict. The statement came as a 30-hour Easter truce between Kyiv and Moscow has expired.
Hopefully, Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. Both will then start to do big business with the United States of America, which is thriving, and make a fortune.
NATO membership for Ukraine is off the table, said U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia Keith Kellogg in a recent interview with Fox News. During the same interview, Kellogg also said that a minerals deal was part of the solution for a comprehensive ceasefire and permanent peace deal.
President Trump has done more in 90 days to solve this war, the largest war in Europe since World War II, than they did in the previous 900-plus days. And he's driving this towards solutions. And one thing I noticed with President Trump and been with him before is don't give him a problem unless you have a solution. And I think we've got a pretty good solution set. The minerals deal is one of them. Also go to a comprehensive ceasefire. When I talk about a comprehensive ceasefire, it's sea, air, land, industrial as well, for a period of at least 30 days, and then it builds to a longer peace deal, a permanent peace deal as well. And I think we're on a good path because we're tired of what's happening. We've got too many other issues in the world that the United States must be involved in, and this war has gone on way too long. But I think there's an opportunity. We presented what I would call a term sheet. This is what it looks like going forward to the Ukrainians. They went back to Kyiv. They're going to come back next week in London. We're going to sit down and say, what does this look like? Then we turned to the Russians and said, okay, what does your term sheet look like? Then you put it together. Let me give you one example. The example is we've been very clear. NATO's off the table. You're not going to be part of NATO. That's something that's not new. We've been talking about that since 2008 when Ambassador Burns told Condoleezza Rice this was a bridge too far.
British fighter jets were scrambled multiple times this week to intercept Russian military aircraft near NATO airspace over the Baltic Sea. The UK Ministry of Defence confirmed the interceptions, which come amid heightened tensions with Moscow. The British Ministry of Defence said Sunday that the Royal Air Force Typhoon jets currently stationed in Poland intercepted Russian planes in 3 separate incidents this week. The missions are a part of NATO's enhanced air policing efforts. The UK's Under-Secretary of State for the Armed Forces, Luke Pollard, emphasised the significance of the missions, saying they demonstrate Britain's commitment to defending NATO's skies alongside allies like Sweden. Pollard said the UK aims to reassure its partners, deter threats and maintain national security in the face of growing Russian aggression. So far, Moscow has not responded to the incidents. The United States and Iran have wrapped up a fresh round of nuclear talks in Rome, described as constructive by both sides. But behind the scenes, Russia is emerging as a key player, offering diplomatic support to Tehran and positioning itself as a mediator. Aisha Abachi reports.
US and Iranian officials concluded a second round of talks to reach a new nuclear deal through Oman's mediation.
As I said, the negotiations were held in a constructive atmosphere, and I can say that they are moving forward.
Just one day before the meeting, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said Russia was very helpful in offering diplomatic support for the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, nuclear agreement, and this time they expect a similar support through their mediation.
From the Iranians' perspective, they are trying to strengthen their position by presenting themselves as a country which closely coordinates its foreign policy with more powerful states, namely Russia.
The JCPOA deal was made in 2015 between Iran and 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, all of whom have nuclear weapons as well as the EU. The goal of the deal was to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for lifting some economic sanctions.
It is a great honor for us to announce that we have reached an agreement on the Iranian nuclear issue.
But in 2018, during his first term, US President Donald Trump pulled out of the deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran.
We will be instituting the highest level of economic sanction. Any nation that helps Iran in its quest for nuclear weapons could also be strongly sanctioned by the United States.
Now Moscow finds itself mediating between Washington and Tehran for a new deal, all while simultaneously engaged in direct negotiations with the US about Ukraine.
In the Middle East, generally, Moscow is rather perceived as the ally of Iran.
Shahed drones have become the clearest symbol of Russia-Iran cooperation used by Moscow to bomb Ukrainian cities since early in the war. But can Putin also leverage this position for his own strategic interests in Ukraine?
There are significant structural differences between American approach to Iran and American approach to Russia.
I think if these negotiations fall apart, then there will be military strikes against Iranian nuclear sites and possibly some other infrastructure on Iran.
Talks resume next week in Oman as U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff moves into the next phase of the negotiations with Iran, aiming for a lasting nuclear deal with Tehran amid ongoing war in Ukraine.
I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon.
For TVP World, I'm Aisha Abachi.
Any illusions Americans may have had about Mr. Putin's desire for peace are gone. These hopes seem to be dashed, said Adam Yasser, TVP World's news director, while recently discussing bilateral negotiations between the US and Russia.
I think we're reaching a point where if there were any illusions on the American side that Mr. Putin genuinely wants a ceasefire, these hopes seem to be dashed, unless something happens in the next few weeks. And I think the important context here to mention, of course, are the talks about the Iran nuclear deal, because we can see that some kind of trilateral dialogue is going on there between the US, Russia, and Iran. So the question is this part of a package or is it a separate issue? We don't know that yet.
Pope Francis made a rare public appearance on Easter Sunday, despite ongoing health issues. The 88-year-old pontiff briefly emerged at the Vatican to deliver his traditional Easter message and blessing. Still recovering from double pneumonia, Pope Francis stepped onto the balcony overlooking St. Peter's Square to give the "to the city and the world" blessing. Doctors have advised him to rest for 2 months so his aging body can fully recover. As a result, he stayed mostly out of sight during the Holy Week, which is normally filled with ceremonies. He was notably absent from most events, including parts of the Easter Sunday Mass. Still, tens of thousands of the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square to mark Christianity's most sacred celebration. Now, long before Easter was ever celebrated, people across the world welcomed the arrival of spring, with customs celebrating the cyclical rebirth of nature. Over time, many of those customs were appropriated by Christianity, and their meanings changed. We visited Warsaw's Museum of Ethnography to learn about ancient Slavic courting rituals and more.
In these archival images from mid-20th century Poland, we catch a glimpse of traditions that have long since faded from daily life.
Easter in Poland is a mixture of, we have a little bit of Christianity in it and also a little bit of other customs. Most of them, in fact, are somehow focused on Easter Monday, especially those related to water, to plants, generally to the growth of everything.
Śmigus Dingus, or Wet Monday, as seen here in historical depictions, is a day when water is splashed and spilled in every direction. It's wild, messy, and full of joy. And boys love to use the opportunity to chase after girls.
The custom of pouring water over each other or smacking each other with willow twigs was meant to bring luck and success. That's why young women were quite eager to get splashed. Of course, painted eggs are pre-Christian. In folk traditions, all these aspects are merging. The egg signifies life. A chick comes out of an egg, so it also gives us hope.
Przed Wielkanocą, jeżeli 3 tygodnie przed tym, to już jest taka największa moja choroba. Już mnie się robota nic nie trzyma, bo stale te pisanki chodzą za mną, stale te wzory. Już zawsze się to pisze na karteczkach, to mama mi przynosi, podkłada różne karteczki, różne wzory, jakie najstarodawniejsze.
Here we have different decorated eggs from Poland, from all around Poland, and also different techniques. So, for example, we have a batik technique, which is the most, almost the oldest technique that is used. This is from Kurpie region. There is another one which is the opposite of this technique. When you have an egg, which you put color on it first, and then you scratch it. So it is the opposite of the batik technique. Again, here, for example, we have another technique used in Łowicz region.
Another distinctive tradition that remains alive in many Polish towns and villages is the Easter Monday masquerade.
Easter masqueraders are doing damage, generally. We call it like that, ritual damage. So they're pouring water on women, they are beating people, also with some pieces of plants, for example, willow. But this is everything about doing fertility magic, in fact. So they receive something back, those masqueraders. Those are eggs, Easter eggs especially, those colorful decorated eggs. Food, alcohol, some money. Because if you don't give them back, something like that, it means bad luck for you.
So what's the most bizarre or unique Easter traditions that you haven't encountered across Poland?
There are a lot of, because every local community has its own. Bziuki is a custom, but it's also the name of the group that does something. And what they are doing is they're spitting the fire during the Easter Holy Mass.
So if around Easter time you are given an egg or smacked with a willow twig, just remember, while some of these customs live on, others now exist only in the echoes of tradition and old footage.
And with this remarkable look at Poland's traditions, we end this news bulletin. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.